Hello there, my name's Anne Hawkins, and I'm in the middle of a series of interviews with small, independent, free-thinking business owners about how small businesses can make a positive impact on the world. This is in response to a remark that somebody made about how big businesses seem to be determined to make the world a worse place than it needs to be for the sole purpose of making rich people even richer. And the response of the people that I work with who run small businesses, as I say, very independent, very free thinking, was we can do better than that. We are better than that. And so I'm picking out a few people who I know are making a really big impact on the world or an important impact on the world and asking them to describe how they're doing that. And today, my guest is Bernie Mitchell. Bernie and I have known each other for about 17 years. We met on Twitter, and I remember his son being born and lots of other things. So I know what Bernie's been up to, and hopefully today we'll be able to describe that to you and inspire some idea that the world is not as bad as it's sometimes painted, and there are lots of people doing really good things. So thanks very much for joining me, Bernie. Um,
Hello, Anne.
that awkward moment. Um, so, Bernie, you have been working in the co-working space for as long as I can remember. Um, so, is there anybody out there, do you think, that needs to have explained to them what a co-working space is?
I I think I'm going to have to try so hard to be serious. I really do think one of the biggest problems with co-working is that nobody really knows what it is. There's like something in the co-working industry. Me and others talk about all the time is the need to educate the public about what it is. And a co-working space is basically, it, if you have to like really be crude about it, is an office that is particularly set up for single, freelancers, solo, and we'll get to. I'm sure we'll get to it in the course of this interview, but it's so much more than that. Um, and for me, like working, I used to work at home a lot, and there's all the conversation, which I'm sure a lot of people reading and listening to this will know. When you work at home, you're isolated and you don't see people, and then when you can go to somewhere with other people who are all on the same page in their business as you just get human connection, which is great for your mental health and well-being and everything. And just it's like Drive, but in a building. I'm going to say
Well, let's start there then. So people, somebody decides that there's a space in their community, in their neighbourhood, and they want to set it up as a co-working space, then they need to get people to come along and hire the desks or hire a space or become regular users or whatever it is. And so their idea is to provide freelancers and other people with a space to work. And you think that the way to make that work better is to make those people into a community or to make it much more than just people pitching up to do their work and going home again without talking to anybody.
it is all so many avenues open there. And so the first thing, I suppose maybe we could go through how to open a co-working space because that so many people go, I'd like to make this a co-working space, and they go for the classic build it, they will come. And something I wildly advocate for is before you even, get a building, get people together in a cafe or like I honestly like once a week I have this type of call. Someone says, I'm thinking of opening a co-working space. How do I do this? And I'll say, so say it was, I don't know, Ely. You go, right, find a pub or a cafe or a community centre or a church hall in Ely and get like-minded people to turn up on a regular basis, even just once a week, call it a pop-up co-working event. And four people will come, then five people will come, then eight people will come, and then 15 people will come. And they'll start to form this community. And you can't, as you know, Anne, you can't tell people the type of community they want to be. They just all kind of crash together and start to organize it. And then if at that point when you're gathering people together, you kind of noticed who isn't there. So if it's like all men with glasses like me talking about Apple products, you know, you need to like diversify the community a bit more. And then at some point, those people you'll be ready to take the next step with that. And my friend Trevor in Canada, in Calgary, those people got together and they formed a co-op and started co-working. No, not Calgary, sorry, Niagara. They started co-working Niagara, and other people put all those people on a list and then send like place have been working with in Wigan. They gathered people like that and then put them on a list and said, if you'd like to become a founder member of the co-working space. So they had 70 seats in their co-working space and they sold one third of those seats before they even opened. And there's a commercial bit to that as well, but it's also how that community comes together. Because the people who, in Wigan, the people who signed up to be a founder member were like more invested in the community and the vision than the people that had to actually see the space physically first, which is probably what I would have had to do before I handed over my money too. So no disrespect to the late adopters.
So, the idea of forming a community, why is that important to you? Why is it important to the potential co-working space owners? Why are they not just looking at what other bigger organizations do to maximize their profits?
And you know, I never know how to answer this. Um, I I feel that um, I've always I was talking about this yesterday. Is that when a company gets bigger, it starts to become inhumane. Even if it starts off with the best intentions, the more you scale, the less human contact and everything like that. So you know, there's that movie which is it called Office Group, Office Day or something with Jennifer Aniston and the there's the guy who's downstairs in the broom cupboard and he's just like processing stuff. And then you get to what that David Grover is it, and the bullshit jobs book. There's just all these levels of bureaucracy and complexity, and you lose that contact. And you know, something I advocate for is when you have co-working spaces that are you know that Dunbar's number thing, like 150 people, I can comprehend 150 people. I can at least know who they are and recognize them in the corridor. And when we're all together in one room, I don't, you know, I don't implode. And I and then when like a friend of mine has just opened a co-working space. I don't think it's a co-working space. I think it's an office, but he just they they said, "Oh yeah, we're opening a space in wherever it is in London, Clerkenwell, and we've got 400 desks." And I was like, "Oh my god, you know, like, how? Why are you doing that?" And I don't know. It almost seems too simple to say. Like to maintain a community of 400 people is very fragmented. Trying to get everyone together at the same time, trying to get everyone to get to know each other. It's like running a school rather than running a community.
Okay.
Did that even
So
answer that? Or was
it
that, was
did.
that?
It did. Well, it kind of did. In terms of you know how a commercial organization works and the scaling. I think what it didn't answer was why is that community so important? You know, when you do have a community, the people turning up to the same place on a regular basis and getting to know people. Why is that important? Is it just because we all crave human connection? Is it creating something different in a neighborhood? Is it taking something from that space out into the neighborhood and making other things happen? What's going on there?
I think there's two things because there's like the never-ending conversation in like I cannot have another conversation about what is community and but like for me and it's very and those bigger spaces bless them they're like um so many spaces they open and because they think they put on some like and I used to have this on my website about 10 years ago and I thought it was so cool. It was like co-working community collaboration and And then someone's like, what does that actually? And I didn't know what it meant. It's like, but that's just what we do. It's connection, community, and co-working. And when you boil it down, there's like, I think it's a bit of a easy thing to say, like, oh, because as humans we crave connection. But when you get a group of people, and so many times I've been in a co-working space, and I suppose the lifespan of that community is maybe a year or 2 years because people come and go. It's almost like a football team, like these people are in this team and it does really well and wins all the championships, and then some people leave and the manager retires and it's a bit rubbish, and then some more people come in and it breathes life into it again. Um, so places I've been in, there's been this kind of random group of people that all seem to have gelled, but what brought them together was I'm going to say values, but I don't think any of those people sat down and read the values and went, yes, that sounds like me, I'll join. They just all, and most of the time people join a co-working space because someone says, oh, you should come here, or someone they know. They obviously find it on the internet and come for a trial day, but most of the time it's like some kind of, here's this is Martin, a friend of Anne, and he's come to do a trial day, and then he feels at home really quickly and then gels. So then that group of people go on and do things, whether it's just organizing a barbecue together, starting a business together, going running together, talk about the same books over their coffee in the morning together. And they form this foundation. And sometimes, but not always, then that foundation, there'll be people around there who were involved in the local community. And in Islington, they're very, very good at this. There's a place called Space 4, which is my go-to example. So there's a very solid group of people in there. Or I mean, there's solid people as human beings, but there's a solid community feel in there. Every Wednesday, they have this Wednesday lunch where everyone puts money. I think it's like £10 nowadays. Everyone puts £10 in the pot. They go to a local restaurant, they buy food, chuck it in the middle of the table. Everyone dives in, and then they invite people in. So anyone listening to this, could just turn up at Space Four and book onto the community lunch. And that co-working space, people come and say things in there, and then they end up doing all these activities with the local area. So a big one is they go out and knock on doors and talk to people in the shops and stuff. So people from it's on what's the name of it? I can't remember the name of the road, but it's a very famous street full of sari shops and clothes shops and fashion boutiques, independent fashion boutiques near Finsbury Park Tube Station. And they come in and they're learning about AI and tech. And so they're contributing to the local community in that way. And one last thing is Islington, and I'm sure they're not the only ones. Islington did this report about 5 years ago. So it's probably, I doubt it's very less inaccurate than this. But every £1 spent with a local business, when you spend £1 with a local business, it goes around the local economy 4 times. And when you spend £1 with, WeWork or Sainsbury's or a big thing, it just disappears out the neighbourhood. So the more people pay attention to a local neighbourhood, the more the money is spent with independent businesses in the local neighbourhood, and the less consumer driven the whole thing gets. I'm going to stop talking now because that was like nearly 5 minutes of non-stop.
That's okay. I mean, that's kind of what an interview's about. It's not about me talking, it's about you talking. So people turn up at this space, and I guess, if they've turned up and they're really busy, they put their headphones on and they've got to get a report done and they don't want to really talk to anybody. They'll either just go somewhere else the next time, or they'll go wherever's convenient. But the people who are attracted to that kind of thing will stick around, and they'll find connection with other folk. So when you've got someone working from home, and they're feeling a bit isolated, they may have a job, where the head office is in another city or something like that, or they may be a freelancer. But someone who is working from home and feeling isolated, how do they find the right place to go to? Is it just a case of searching on the internet? And then what we all know what happens then, that the people who've got a lot of money to spend on saying, come to our co-working space, will come up top of the list. So what I guess what's behind my question is, how do you find more people who want to get involved in this kind of thing? How do you make it spread? How do you make it an aspirational thing that someone will want to be part of?
Um, I have this. A lot of it is just constant awareness. So there's a place we worked with in London, and you know, Emily. Emily's very good at SEO and working out, you know, how many dollars people are spending on stuff. So, long-standing neighbourhood co-working space, and then new big shiny space opens up and is spending, I don't know, five, £700 a month on SEO, and they're completely ripping. So when you type in the space of our co-working space, they've brought that name so they appear above. Um, and you know, people do this. You know, if you type in Sainsbury's, Tesco's comes up, or and vice versa. I don't know if it does, but that kind of thing. So which I, if I see a company doing that, I immediately go, because you brought your competitor's name, I think you suck. So I'd rather
Yes.
not do business with you. And what this is a bit of a sideways answer. And what happened is everyone ran over to the new shiny space because they did this amazing offer and they were caning it in the internet search. And then they changed the membership and said trial's over. Now it's, you know, way more than what it was, and everyone came back. I know this doesn't answer your original question, but there's something to do with the people that like chase the deal with the people that are
Mm.
invested in the community. And in COVID, there was co-working spaces. I was in a co-working space. I kept paying my membership because I was invested in the community. So I couldn't go to the desk, um, but I those people helped me. Those people where we talked in Slack and online and had calls, we got each other through that little bit of COVID. So Remy and Tori had created a community that went beyond, you know, the physical building, which is
Mm.
which is what we all want. And there was another um, well-known co-working brand in I think it was Moorgate, who their members got together and took them to court because they offered all these gimmicks that were not available in COVID. And these people said, well, mate, you know, I can't come and do all this stuff. Why am I paying you, you know, a lot of money a month? And they're like, well, because you signed a contract. Well, isn't your contract void because what you said was available isn't available? No, but it's a contract. And I don't know if they did, but their attitude was like, COVID is an act of God, so it doesn't qualify. And then they went and they had to get to a legal argument over membership, which is
Yeah.
not a membership or community. But back to your original question, the I think it's really hard because if you I don't the ugly truth is co-working spaces don't help themselves because they try to entice you in a way that I described at the beginning of that with offers and stuff like that. And I hope that most sane people are not going for an offer. And if a place is more, um, I'm going to say transparent instead of authentic, you know, like this is what actually happens is that people who have micro businesses and are freelancers and are starting things come in here and they sit at a desk and they all kind of like somehow get on and there's some nice coffee and that's pretty much every day. You know, that is what the everyday is. It's not, you know, David Beckham coming to sign footballs or Boris Johnson, you know, doing a Q&A. It's actually just, you know, people coming in, sitting, opening computers and getting on with it. And it's a very nice place to do that. Um, so let explaining the explaining not what you get when you join a co-working space, but how it will enable you to progress your career. There's that cute phrase from Donald Miller, which is thrive and survive. And I think it's different articulating how a co-work or any business will help you thrive and survive rather than just like marketing it because you think you should be doing marketing. I'm not
Okay.
sure that did answer your question, but you can try again.
It it does. It does. So if somebody's again sitting at home, feeling isolated, and they've looked around their neighbourhood and there isn't a co-working space near where they are, or they're not aware of one, and they like, if they're listening to this interview and they like what you're saying, and wish there was something that they could join in with in their neighbourhood, what can they do? You mentioned pop-up co-working. Can anybody do that? Is that a good place to start? If somebody doesn't, they've already got their own business, they don't necessarily want to have a co-working business. How does that work? How does this movement, if it is such a thing, expand?
I what I would recommend to people, like not even just I think this is a good idea, like this is exactly the thing, is I really like a event platform called Luma, which is very, very easy to use. And you make a little event on Luma and you go and find a cafe or a pub with a function room, and ideally you'd have a relationship with it. If you go to the Greasy Spoon and say, "Can I come in here with a bunch of people? And by the way, you need to give us Wi-Fi, and we'll be here from like 9 till 12." They're not going to go for it. But if there's a particularly a new business that needs to get people in the door, or there's an older established business which is kind of has more room than it knows what to do within a weekday, I asked them what is the quietest day of the week, and say Tuesday, and said, "Could I come in here and sit in your room and we'll all drink coffee and we'll order food and we'll be respectful, but we just want to get a bunch of people together to work. And have you got Wi-Fi? That would be great. And if not, people can use their phones." But then you start getting people together, and that first act of just even sitting around a table with six other people and getting out of your house is life changing, and that's kind of all you need to do. And if you go, I've worked in hospitality and catering for ages. If you go in thinking, acting like this is a good idea for you and it's going to save your business, it won't work. If it's like, would you be up for collaborating on this? It's the kind of tone to use. Um, and then just, you might need to do that for like 6 months and just sitting with another group of people, getting out your office or your dining room table or your kitchen table or whatever it is, once a once a week, sorry, will be really, really good for your, well-being and ability to collaborate. And
Yeah.
one of the what so can I just check this bit out? Like one of the best things about any kind of environment like that or co-working is all the little things you learn of each other that you don't realize you need to know. And I sat in a co-working space next to a guy called Niels, who is a WordPress expert, and he'd sort of look over at the corner of his eye and go, "What are you doing?" And I'd be like, "I'm just like looking for where to find email in my." He goes, "Press that button there," and it saved me hours. But I would never have, if he, I wouldn't have probably wouldn't have gone to a class if he put it on and charged me £50, and he wouldn't have really wanted to do that anyway. But there's all these micro interactions, which is the interconnection that happens in those environments.
Yeah, yeah, that's fabulous. When you were describing, just starting something off, didn't there used to be an organization called Co-working Jelly?
Jelly is there's two things. Jelly is that where it's still going actually.
Is it?
Yeah, and lots of co-working spaces. I completely forgotten this, Sam. This is like forgetting, who Henry VIII was in British history. Jelly was integral to so many co-working spaces starting, and people would get together in each other's houses and community centres, and it was just like, and it was particularly strong around 2008 and when the whole economy collapsed because people had to find each other, had to work their jobs, were in new environments. A lot of people I know so many people that went to an office on a regular basis, and then when they started their thing on their own, they didn't realize how lonely it was. You know, we've all done it, and they kind of read all the independent economic agent, freelancer, Nirvana shite online, and then realize that actually working on your own is like sitting in a room on your own, and there's no IT support, and there's no, lunch breaks and stuff like this. Um, so that was really good for that. I got so into co-working because I joined a group run by someone called Alex Butler, who was she was part of that whole tech city phenomenon around Old Street Roundabout, and she she was like, this, we're getting a little bit carried away here, aren't we? There's a lot of freelancers, and freelancers, are not people, freelancer is not secret code for can't get a job. And she noticed this is like 2009, I think it was. She noticed co-working spaces popping up everywhere. And she had this community that she ran with someone else, which was freelance, grown up freelancers, not like watch the TikTok video freelancers. And she started to say to them, if I turned up with like, you know, 10 freelancers who are in your target market once a week, could we have a table? And they were like, yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's how I got to know so many people in London co-working, because we would meet in a different co-working space every day for 4 hours. So we usually like go and have lunch together, go and work for 4 hours in a very focused spot, and then like go and meet each other. And that was like life. That was a lot of us were struggling mentally, and that was a massive antidote to getting out of the house and furthering our careers, but also our well-being and ability to function in society.
Okay, and that's the unexpected benefit, isn't it? I mean, I can't imagine that any co-working space advertises that as a benefit, but that's the kind of thing that people get once if they get into the crowd that suits them, obviously.
And that's where like talking talking in your content, you can talk about well-being and stuff like that. And I think you can't assume that everyone's going to understand that that's a benefit, but like most people, let me be careful what I say. I think mental health is a much better conversation than it was 10 years ago. So the narrative of isolation, and if you articulate it without sounding like a solution, like as a something that could help rather than a solution, is what I'm trying to say. Because I think it's inauthentic to say, come to our co-working space and you won't be depressed. And some people sort of imply that, and it's kind of true but not true.
Okay, so you've got two groups of people really that you're aiming your message at. The people who are involved in running co-working spaces or feel that this is something that they'd like to do, and the people who would like to be less isolated and come along and join in a group. So how do you distinguish between those two, or do you just talk about the benefits of co-working and hope that those people will separate themselves out and come and talk to you?
I've got two. So, if you like my target audience, like for people who commercially is co-working space owners, and then I run a group called I always say I co-founded it because there's a lot of people that have been involved in it over the years. Called the London Co-working Assembly, and that is people who mostly it's people who own or run a co-working space, and we get together and talk about the highs and lows of running a co-working space. A lot of what we covered in this call, and people have the really exciting conversations you need to have about running a co-working space. About, do I use MailerLite? Do I use HubSpot? Do I use Mailchimp? Do I use this co-working space software? My member Darren keeps on smoking in the toilet. What do I do? And just everything that comes with like running any kind of community organization, building, and all the marketing that comes with that. And when you run, I think this is the same for any business owner, but particularly when you run a co-working space, it's a bit like running a religious community. If you're the head of the community, you have to kind of answer, if you're in the Catholic Church, you have to answer the head office and you have to answer to your congregation. There's no one in the middle to really, help you. So if you are one person that runs a co-working space, you are very, very isolated. So then getting together with other co-working space owners is like really, really important. And we do that in a thing which is very much like Drive. Once a month, we get people together, and we're even quicker than Drive. People come in the call, we say hello, we give a question. So there's a facilitation to the thing. And if you don't answer the question, doesn't matter. Put people in groups of four, leave them there for 40 minutes because it's only once a month. and come out, and everyone is always like, "That is the best thing I've done all month." And all they're doing is talking to each other. There's no, sponsors or quizzes or anything like that. And that getting together is so important. And I hope that I haven't actually said it to that group of people. Because I hope that by doing that with each other, they'll realise that when they get back to their spaces, that's the kind of thing people will need in their spaces. Again, I don't think I answered your question. Sorry.
It doesn't matter. It was really interesting and useful information, and I think that that's kind of what we're doing with these calls is saying that there are obvious great big shiny co-working spaces that have had venture capital pumped into them and they're actually property investments. But what you're offering is something completely different, which very people focused, and focusing on the people who are running those as well as the people who pitch up, just to see what's happening. And then hopefully take out whatever it is that they get from there into their local neighbourhood. So I think in terms of how you as an individual are answering the question that I put right at the beginning of how we make the world a better space, a better place, rather than following the big company, maximizing profit. You've answered beautifully. So thank you. And obviously, I'll let people know how they can get in touch with you if they want to pursue this conversation any further. Is there anything else that you'd like to say before we end the call, Bernie?
No, I'm. If you ever want to open a co-working space, like just do that thing I said about Luma. It's very simple. And if you do want to open a co-working space, just find London Co-working Assembly, even if you're not in London, and join the email list, and that will connect you. This hundreds and hundreds of people and projects, that are all connected, and we talk about them all the time in that email newsletter. So you will always find something to connect to, and I want to stress it's like-minded people, whether they're running affordable workspaces run by the local council, or they just want to, there's very small villages in England where people have got together a co-working space and they run art competitions and they collaborate with a local school, or they're in a restaurant and they're doing something. There's a load of academics researching how co-working spaces and those type of neighborhood spaces can impact the local community. And it's not a new thing. It's a very evolved conversation. And one of the most fun things I do, and this is why we do the podcast, is just go around talking to people and shining a light on the people that are pretty so busy, say like this, so busy doing what they do, they don't have time to hire PR agencies and go and speak at TED conferences. So there are hundreds and hundreds of people trying to make these kind of projects work on their own.
Fantastic. So, if people want to find out more about this, they can sign up to your newsletter. We'll put the details of that in the notes. They can find you on LinkedIn. Again, I'll put the link there. Any other way that you'd like people to get in touch with you?
There's the Co-working Values podcast, which is twice a week, and we're like most things we talked about in this, we go around and interview people. Like the last two we did was Mr. John Alexander, which has been a massive impact. John's come and spoken twice at the London Co-working Assembly, and just did a Q&A, and everyone was like, "That's what I meant all along." And then we did a podcast with Mari, who opened a co-working space in Puerto Rico just before there was the big, I can't remember the name of it, but there was a big hurricane in Puerto Rico in 2018. And in that, she talks about how everyone came and used her co-working space because it was the only place with Wi-Fi. And that's what started the community. And there's just loads of stories like that, which are not, I started a co-working space, it was really shiny. It's like this came, something happened, it crashed our community. We had a space we could gather, and then that made the next version of our community.
Okay. Thank you so much, Bernie. We'll put all the contact details in the notes. It's lovely to explore in a bit more depth what you do. So again, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Anne. I never know what to do at the end. Um, what I'm dying to tell you is
Is this still
uh,
on the recording before you go?
no.
Just,
This
just
isn't the recording thing.
okay, right. So let me formally finish the interview before you start getting into the confessional. So again, lovely to talk to you and find out in more depth what you do, Bernie. I'm sure we'll have many more conversations to come.